On the line with us, I have Nikki Scuball, who is our rep with Aetna. She handles the national channel, and she has a great presentation for you regarding the dual changes coming up this year. I think it's very thorough. I learned a lot. I've been on it a couple times, so we're definitely in some good hands this afternoon. As she goes through her presentation, if you have questions, just pop them in the chat box, the question box. Either one's fine. I'll check both, and we'll address them at the end. That way it's a little smoother, and we'll just get through the presentation and take questions at the end. I will also make sure I send this out to you all. I know everybody always asks if we'll get a copy. You will. I will send that out today when this ends, along with some other helpful handouts Nikki provided. And with that, I will let Nikki kick it off.
Thank you, Serena. Hi, everyone. Happy Friday to those of you who are here with us live. Really grateful for your partnership and excited to speak to you today about these upcoming changes. So let's get going. If I can make my computer work. Today we're going to talk about these 2025 changes Serena mentioned. We'll talk about what plans qualify for the new SEPs and why it matters to you as agents and what's next for you. So to get us started, for those of you who have sold to dual special needs eligible consumers or those who have extra help, LIS, low income subsidy, up until now, you've had that quarterly SEP for the first 3 quarters of the year. I think that started in maybe 2019. Before that, it was monthly. But basically, every quarter of the year, you had an opportunity to move somebody who was eligible for DSNP at any level. They could be full or partial or eligible for LIS. They could move to any plan that they were qualified for, they were eligible for. And that gave you that opportunity. If somebody wasn't in a plan that was the best fit for them, if they needed to make a change, if there was a benefit structure that was going to better suit them, you could move them. And those days are done. There is no longer a quarterly SEP for anybody. It doesn't matter what level of low income subsidy or DSNP they have, there is no more quarterly SEP. So I think that's really important to kind of wrap your heads around if this is news to you. The quarterly SEP is completely gone. It's over, finito, it's done. So that's just not an option anymore. So that means that you're going to have to kind of rethink how you're going to approach these members, sell to these members, and find your book of business, because there are a couple of different SEPs that are now in place. And it's going to depend on some qualifying factors if they're going to be available to consumers with whom you work. So in 2025, we have something new. It's called the Integrated Care SEP. And this allows a full benefit dual eligible. So full benefit dual eligible is a QMB plus, QMB plus, a SlimB plus, SLMB plus, or FBDE. They now have a once per month election period into a fully integrated dual eligible plan. That's a FIDE DSNP, or a highly integrated dual eligible plan. That's a HIDE DSNP. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that in a second, but those are specific types of DSNP plans. And those plans are contracted through the states. They're very specific types of plans. So it doesn't just mean that someone has the same Medicare and Medicaid provider, right? That's not what this means. It means that it's a specific type of plan offered by carriers in specific states. And if someone is full dual, they can use that monthly SEP, the monthly integrated SEP, to align their Medicare and Medicaid. So that is an option that's out there and available to people in certain states. And I'm going to show you a map. And like Serena said, you're going to get these materials. So I'll show you a map where Aetna has these types of plans. And you can also see from a general national view where these types of plans are available and where they're not. Now, the other SEP that's out there, what kind of replaced the quarterly SEP, and I will say in advance, no one asked my opinion on this. So I don't know if it's the direction some of us might have gone in for serving members who are, dual and LIS eligible, but this is what we have to work with. And it's important you understand this, not because I think you'll use it, but because you need to make sure your consumers, your members, your clients know that this is out there so they don't use this incorrectly. So anyone who's dual eligible or anyone who qualifies for extra help LIS, they do have a new monthly SEP available to them. And this goes all the way up until December 1st, right? So they could use this now at any time during the year. and they can leave a Medicare Advantage plan or a D-SNP plan if they're enrolled in one, and they can return to original Medicare, and they can then pick up a PDP. So, okay, that's an option for them, and they can switch that PDP once a month if they feel like it, if that excites them, or if there's a better fit for them out there on those PDPs. I know there aren't as many PDPs as there used to be. So that is available to somebody. So if they do need to move to original Medicare for whatever reason, we know for the most part, those folks who are economically challenged, the only reason they would really ever return to original Medicare is usually because of a network concern, something like that, right? There's not a lot of incentive for them healthcare wise, because they're not going to get some of those supplemental benefits that they're going to get from their DSNP or MAPD plan. But the important thing to remember is if someone just does this, if someone decides on May 5th that, hey, for June 1st, I have partial DSNP and I'm going to leave my plan and I'm going to go back to original Medicare and pick up a PDP, they can do that, but they're not going to be able to move back, right? They won't be able to return to an MAPD plan, a partial DSNP plan. They don't have that option until AEP. So they're going to be stuck with original Medicare and that PDP. And that might be the right fit for them, but for a lot of people, they may not understand that they no longer have that quarterly option. So when you think about your retention, when you think about the consumers you're serving who are used to being able to make these changes, this is kind of a big one. And also when you think about the people you might work with in the community, if you're out doing grassroots events, if you're talking to people in housing, if you talk to providers, whatever you might do, you might work with food pantries. There's all kinds of different people in the community you might use as referral sources. They might not know that this change has happened. So they could be giving someone incorrect advice as well, inadvertently. But it's important that you let them know, hey, that quarterly option is over. And if somebody has partial DSNP, if they have LIS only, or depending on the state where they live, they may not have the option to move around anymore like they used to. Now, before I go on, I do want to remind you, all of the other SEPs that you know and love are still out there and still active with the same rules, right? So if somebody moves a service area, if they're new to Medicaid, if they're aging in, all of those things are still there. So you still have those options to work with, and that's a lot of opportunity, but it's not that guaranteed known quarterly SEP that we're used to. So again, there's still lots of different ways somebody might qualify to make a change in their Medicare Advantage plan, but the quarterly one is no longer with us. So a lot of you want to know, why is CMS making these changes? It feels kind of abrupt, but it's really not. This has been something that's been in the works for several years, going back, I want to say to like 2016, 2017, CMS started rolling toward this. They want to move people who are dual eligible toward these integrated plans because there's a lot of reasons. And one is that the health care that the consumer is getting, these beneficiaries, they have found through studies and checking in with them that their health care is better. They have better health outcomes. They're happier with the results. It's easier for them to get doctor's appointments. They're finding just that overall they have a better experience. But the other reason is that this is easier. It's easier for CMS. It's easier for the state Medicaid offices. It's easier for the carriers. And it's less expensive for everybody involved. So it's less expensive for taxpayers. It's less expensive for CMS. It's less expensive for the states. It's less expensive for the carriers. So when you think about it from that regard, even though this is a change that from a perspective of serving beneficiaries, working with these populations, it can be a little bit frustrating from us from a sales standpoint because it's not as easy. When you think about the long-term benefits of it, it means healthier people at lower costs. So you can understand the motivation behind it. Now, the goal of CMS has been to integrate all DSNP plans by 2030. Now, none of us know exactly what the future holds. We know the one guarantee with Medicare is that there will be change. How this all rolls out will remain to be seen. But trust that your friends at Pinnacle and we at Aetna will make sure as soon as we have updates and know more information, we'll make sure that you have the same information that we do. So let's talk about a little bit about which plans qualify. because I mentioned there are different types of D-SNP plans, and not all of them are going to be eligible for this integrated SEP. So when we think about D-SNP plans, dual eligible special needs plans, so for people who have both Medicare and Medicaid, there are three different types that we're going to refer to for the sake of this presentation, and really for your purposes when you're thinking about who you can enroll using this SEP. So the first one is a highly integrated D-SNP plan. And this is where someone can hold the Medicare and Medicaid contracts either directly or through separate entities. So this is not as rigid as a FIDE. And what's important to remember when we talk about HIDE plans, at least when it comes to Aetna, we have HIDE plans in a couple states. And when someone enrolls in a HIDE during AEP, if they move to us during OEP, let's say it's their initial enrollment period and they want to enroll in our HIDE plan, they can have Aetna as their D-SNP plan, and they can have another carrier be their Medicaid plan, right? They don't have to have those two plans aligned at the time of enrollment for any other SEP, any other enrollment period. The only time they would need to do that is to use the integrated care SEP. And again, the whole point of that SEP is to align Medicare and Medicaid. So you can see the reasoning behind that. So again, the HIDEs are a little bit less strict for all of the other enrollment periods because they're not requiring alignment. The only time that alignment has to happen, it has to be in place, is when you want to use that monthly integrated SEP. So that's a little bit different. Now with a FIDE, that's a fully integrated D-SNP, and that's when one plan has everything all in one place, one card, everything is coming from the same carrier. And the member doesn't really know. They don't know if they're getting certain services from Medicaid or Medicare. It doesn't matter. It's all coming from the same place. And when somebody enrolls in a FIDE plan, the D-SNP plan that they choose, that FIDE, that determines who their Medicaid carrier is going to be. So the consumer doesn't have a choice, but from your perspective as an agent, that makes it a little bit easier from you from an administrative standpoint, because there's nothing for you or the consumer to do on the back end. There's nothing else going on. The person is going to pick the plan they want based on the needs analysis you do when you present the benefit options available to them, talk about their providers, talk about the formulary, all the stuff that you do in your due diligence. If they select the Aetna FIDE plan, then great. All you do is enroll them just as you do with any other plan, and they're going to be ready to go. So you can move them. We won't recommend it every month, but you can move them as needed if they need to make that change using that SEP without having to worry about anything else, because their Medicaid comes along with them because it's fully integrated. Now the coordinated D-SNP plans, and again, I've got a map, so you're going to see how these break out. These are plans where it's just like it is right now when you just kind of think of general D-SNP. And what I mean by that is the person may or may not have the same carrier for Medicare and Medicaid. It really doesn't matter. Those states where there's coordination only, there's no option to align because they don't offer HIDE or FIDE plans. So there is no monthly SEP in those states. And you'll also see a couple of other examples where there are states where there are HIDE and FIDE contracts available, but there are also coordinated D-SNP plans available in those states. So someone may be able to enroll in those plans, again, using open enrollment, AEP, their IEP, whatever it might be, whatever SEP is out there that they qualify for, but they wouldn't be able to use the integrated monthly SEP to move into those plans because those coordinated D-SNP carriers don't have a contract for a HIDE or a FIDE. They just have the coordinated plan. So again, those are the three different types, and only the HIDE and FIDE plans are going to be eligible for that monthly integrated SEP, and only those who are full dual are going to qualify for that monthly integrated SEP. And why is that? Why is it that they have to be full dual? Well, it's because there's nothing to integrate for a partial dual because they don't have Medicaid, right? So the whole point of this is to integrate Medicare and Medicaid, to align them, to make sure they have the same carrier. And if you don't have Medicaid, you don't have anything to align. So as a reminder, when we talk about full duals, that's our QIMBY Plus, our FBDEs, and our SLIMBY Plus. They're cost share protected, and they have full Medicaid benefits. Now, when we talk about our partial dual consumers, Our QIMBs, our QMBs, they are cost share protected, but they don't have Medicaid. So they don't have anything to align. And the same thing goes then with our SlimB, our QDWI, our QI. They don't have Medicaid. So they're not going to be eligible for this SEP because there's nothing to match up. Now, one thing I do want to point out when we talk about partial duals, Aetna and other carriers do have plans that are a HIDE, for example. We do have them that allow either QIMB, SlimB, QDWI, or QI to enroll. So again, they can enroll during AEP, OEP, their initial enrollment period. You know, they move to one of those states from a different state and they've got a change of service area SEP. Great, they can use that SEP. They can enroll using any of those other methods, but they're not going to be eligible for that monthly integrated SEP because they have nothing to integrate. They're not full dual. So I mentioned the map. So here's the map from an Aetna perspective. So this is what it looks like when we're talking about Aetna. And the reason it's all about Aetna is because that's where I work and that's what I'm concerned about, right? So let's kind of walk through this from an Aetna perspective. And Serena will be sending this out to you, but it also does give you the national overview. So I know you sell other products besides Aetna, and you're in other states that we may not be. So this will at least give you that head start, and your friends at Pinnacle can make sure you have the information you need for those other carriers. So you're best to serving the members because that's ultimately the most important thing. So the dark purple states, this is where we have an Aetna, HIDE, or FIDE plan. So that's New Jersey, Virginia, Kentucky, and Florida. Now, New Jersey and Virginia are states where Aetna has a FIDE plan, that fully integrated dual eligible plan, and we've had them there for quite some time. So again, when you're selling to people in those states who are full dual, as long as they meet the requirements as your due diligence when you go through with them and you're checking their needs analysis, if it is the right plan for them, the Aetna FIDE, all you need to do is, again, as long as they're full dual and they live in the service area, you're going to use the enrollment, you're going to have them, complete the application, submit it, and it's going to work exactly the way it works right now for you. So there's no difference from this time last year when you used the dual SEP, if you used it. In Virginia and New Jersey with the Aetna FIDE, it's exactly the same. The only difference now is that you're not held back by quarter. You can do it on a monthly basis. Now, this is the thing I want you to think about, and I'm pretty sure you're all going to be in sync with this, is that when we talk about FIDE eligible consumers, these are our most vulnerable dual eligible consumers, right? So you know that they're typically living in poverty. They have 3 or more chronic conditions on average. Health literacy may not be something that they're incredibly robust with, right? They may not have the best grasp of health literacy. These are members that need extra help, both with their health care, but also sometimes understanding health care. So moving them monthly is probably not a good idea unless there's something really glaring. If you walk somebody through their plan and you're talking to them and they say they want to move, if it's not because they don't have a provider that they can access or there's something that they really need that they're not able to get on their current plan, you may want to give them enough time to settle into the plan and understand the benefits. And I say that because, for example, at Aetna, every DSNP member, every CSNP member, every DSNP member across the country has a full care management team at their disposal from the first day that they're effective. But as you know, even with your own insurance, when you on day one of your insurance going effective, you're not going to have the full benefit of all of your benefits available to you right then, and you're not going to know how everything works. It takes a little bit of time. And so when we talk about a care management team, they're going to be able to, they need the time to connect with that member, to talk them through, to build a care plan and help them get on that healthcare journey. And I would say the same thing for all the other carriers. DSNP is a delicate operation, making sure that people have what they need, and it's not ever going to happen overnight. So if you're serving that community, I would caution against moving someone just for the sake of moving them. I think you already know that, but it's just kind of my PSA. You want to let them have time to make sure that really they do need to make that change, because they might find that they are in a plan that is the right fit for them and their needs. So again, when you do your due diligence, you'll figure that out. Now you see 2 other dark purple states on here. That's Florida and Kentucky. So Aetna has HIDE plans in these states. Now, Florida, as it is with everything, I think, it's a little bit of the Wild West when it comes to Medicare. And we have our Heidi there, and it's a contract that's called a capitated contract. And what that means is that in order for our Heidi to operate, we don't have to worry about the Medicaid being aligned, because if you remember from that Heidi definition, it's like a sponsor organization. So Aetna takes care of that from the back end. And the only reason I'm sharing this with you is because the experience from an agent and a member's point of view is very much like it is in a FIDE state. When it comes to Aetna, Heidi in Florida, you'll do your needs analysis, you'll check eligibility, so they're full dual, they live in the service area, and if our Heidi plan is the right fit for them, you can simply do the enrollment application, submit it, and they'll be good to go. You don't have to worry about anything else on the back end. That's with Florida, with Aetna, and the Heidi. You don't have to worry about aligning Medicaid because we have a different kind of contract there. So that's going to make the experience easier for you and for the consumers, because again, there's really nothing else you have to do. You don't have any other work to worry about when it comes to getting them enrolled with using that monthly integrated SEP. Now, Kentucky is a little bit different. It's a Heidi state, and Aetna Better Health is the name of our Medicaid plan in Kentucky. So in order to use the monthly SEP in Kentucky, the consumer is going to have Aetna Better Health as their Medicaid carrier. And they're going to have that as of the time they're going to have their Aetna Heidi DSNP enrollment. So that's something that might take a little bit of time. This is the first time the country, CMS, the states, they're all doing this. So not everything is in sync, right? Reporting for Medicaid offices are not necessarily in sync with how Medicare does things. So a couple of things to keep in mind is you're going to have to ask the consumer in Kentucky, hey, who's your Medicaid provider? If they don't know, they can call the Medicaid office. They can go on Connect, that's KYNECT. That's the Kentucky Medicaid portal, and they can see, you know, if their card doesn't tell them, they can see who their Medicaid provider is. Now, if they don't have Aetna Better Health and they want to move to an Aetna plan, they have to enroll in Aetna Better Health as their Medicaid provider. And they can do that in Kentucky once per month. They can make that change. But here's kind of the catch. And we're going to have a job aid specific to Kentucky coming out. We're still working on some things to make sure that we outline this process so it's as easy for you, the broker, and as easy for the consumer as possible. But there's timelines on when they can make that change, even though it's once per month, to when it's going to line up. So there may be a couple more hurdles in Kentucky when we talk about moving them to the Aetna Heidi plan, or really any other carrier's Heidi plan, because of those different rules. So again, I'm not going to deep dive into Kentucky here because I know that this is a national overview, but if you sell in Kentucky, talk to your Aetna broker manager, talk to Pinnacle, and we will, like I said, get more information to you as soon as we have all of those details finalized from the state. So those are our 4 Heidi and FIDE states for 2025. And now let's talk a little bit about these lavender states that you see: New York, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Nebraska, Texas. These are states that have Heidi or FIDE plans available to them. But right now, Aetna only offers coordinated DSNP. So when I talked about before, those 3 different types of DSNP plans, someone can enroll in the Aetna coordinated DSNP during AEP, OEP, their initial enrollment period, using another SEP, right? They can come and join our plan. But that monthly integrated SEP is not available to join our coordinated DSNP because it doesn't have a Heidi or FIDE contract behind it. Now in Pennsylvania, if you sell in PA, you're familiar with the Community Health Choices. That is the overarching Heidi plan in the state of PA. Aetna is a finalist for the new contract. We are eagerly awaiting the state's decisions, but we haven't heard it yet. So there is a possibility sometime in 2025 that Aetna could have a Heidi available in PA. I promise you, the second those plans are about to go live, you will know about it if you sell in Pennsylvania. We will make sure you know, everyone will know. So again, we have, oh, my audio is getting a little funky. Serena, can you hear me okay?
I can. You just cut out for a second there, but I think
Okay.
you're okay now.
Okay. Great. I got a weird message. Okay. So
Yeah.
if someone is enrolled in the Aetna D-SNP plan in Pennsylvania, great. We're happy to have them. We hope they stay with us. But if they decide to move to one of the current HIDE plans using this monthly integrated SEP, they can do so, but they're not going to be able to come back to Aetna without having a different kind of SEP. So again, it's kind of like when we talked about how people could leave and go back to original Medicare, pick up that PDP. People who are full dual in states where there's both coordinated and a HIDE or a FIDE, they may be enrolled in that coordinated plan. And if they choose to use that monthly SEP to join a HIDE or a FIDE, they can do so, but they're not going to be able to go back to that coordinated plan without having a different kind of SEP. So again, just some nuances there that are important to remember, because there are a few different types of coordinated D-SNPs in PA, not just from Aetna, but from other carriers. So those are those lavender states. The other thing I wanted to point out, in Nebraska, Aetna has a D-SNP plan, it's coordinated, but in the state of Nebraska, and again, I don't know all these states by heart, I happen to know that somebody can only change their Medicaid between October and December. So really, in a state like that, if there are rules like that in the state, that SEP kind of doesn't really exist, right? Because if you can only change your Medicaid, the only way somebody could use that integrated SEP is if they already have the Medicaid carrier for the D-SNP plan they want to move to. So again, just kind of want to point that out, that this isn't necessarily as open as some people might think, because the state's rules of when you can move your Medicaid are going to supersede the CMS SEP. So again, you've got to know those nuances for each state where there is that HIDE. Now, FIDEs are different, as you know. The Medicaid is going to follow the D-SNP, but a HIDE doesn't work that way. Okay, so those are those lavender states with the white writing. Now you see a lot of kind of purple states with white writing in them. So Ohio, Maryland, Michigan, the Carolinas, Georgia, Missouri, South Dakota, Colorado, all the way out to Nevada. Those are coordination only states. What does that mean? It means nobody has a HIDE or a FIDE in those states. Nobody has a monthly SEP. Now, a lot of people find this to be, concerning. It means, wow, I may not be able to get new business, but think about it this way. Think about how great that is for D-SNP retention, for LIS retention. That means those consumers, once OEP is done, they're hopefully in the right plan for them. And they're going to be in that plan until AEP rolls around, because they're not going to have a quarterly SEP. They can't change, they can't move unless they have another life event that opens up an SEP to them. So this is a great opportunity for those of you who sell in those states to focus on other ways of building your business, on working, on finding other SEPs, on working on agents and other different opportunities available to you. And I know Pinnacle and your Aetna broker manager will work with you on that. So again, I know it can feel a little daunting because you're thinking that the door is closed, but it's not. It's just a different way for you to look at it. So please look at it as a retention opportunity and the chance to explore different ways of building your book. So the other thing you're going to see is a bunch of lighter gray states with white writing. Those are states that are also integrated. So that means there's a HIDE or a FIDE, but Aetna does not have any D-SNP plans there. So we don't have anything for sale, but you may work in those markets. So work with Pinnacle to find out who might be available for you to offer to your clients there. Now you might say to me, but wait, I have D-SNP clients in Delaware or California. And that's true. We do have D-SNP plans there, but because we don't have HIDE or FIDE contracts in those states, this is our last year there. We have retention only plans and we're winding down. So we actually still, I haven't looked at the numbers. We have a really, really big book of business in Delaware for such a small state. People loved our plan and have been really happy with us, but this will be the end of it. So they'll be with us until 12/31 of 25. And again, if they leave the plan during the year, they can't come back. We can't have any new business. Now, of course, things are always subject to change. State contracts come up. We'll see what happens in the future, but that's how we sit as of right now. And then the darker gray states with the black writing, those are states where they're coordinated only and Aetna does not have any D-SNP plans. And then the gray states with the red writing, Illinois, Alaska, Vermont, New Hampshire, nobody has DSNP at all. There are no DSNP plans in those states in 2025. So no SEP there because there's no DSNP period. All right, let's go on to the next slide here. I'm not going to go through this, but it's basically the same thing you just saw on the map. And again, this is from an Aetna perspective. It's kind of a flow chart. So you could look at the states in which you are ready to sell with Aetna, and you can say, okay, what's available? Do I have these DSNP SEPs? What do I need to do? So it's just a way for you to look at it from a different perspective. And then also on here, this is a flow chart from CMS. So this is just, again, kind of the national overview. We're taking the Aetna perspective out of it, but you can see every state, what might be available. So this is a nice quick reference when you're working with Pinnacle to talk about your business plan and how you want to approach DSNP for the remainder of the year. This is a good way for you to kind of have a shortcut in addition to your Aetna reference materials. So let's just talk quickly about why this matters. You know, again, to you, these changes are a big deal because marketing changes for 2025. You know, right now, you know, I mean, we've all heard it. The first rule of OEP is just like Fight Club. You can't talk about OEP during OEP. But before, when we worked with DSNP and LIS consumers, because you had the quarterly SEP, you could talk about moving plans all you wanted. You could tailor your marketing to talk to them about the opportunities available to them because OEP rules didn't apply. That's not the case anymore. Can't talk about OEP and you don't have a quarterly SEP. You only have in the markets where there are HIDE and FIDE plans available that targeted SEP, and you have to be very, very careful about how you market that. So this means, again, a different way of presenting what you have available, the plans that are available. And so really, you kind of need to think about your DSNP, your LIS eligible consumers, the same way you've been thinking about your general enrollment consumers all these years, is that you don't have the opportunity to be as open about moving plans, should that be the right fit for them. You need to approach them in a different way, and you need to position your marketing differently. You can do this, you've been doing it all along for general enrollment, but it's just a different mindset. And, you know, I've got some information here from the Aetna handy guide to OEP. Serena will be sending that to you as a refresher. And of course, everyone at Pinnacle is very adept at compliance and able to help you along with your Aetna broker manager, because there are still lots of ways for you to connect in the community and for you to get your message out there. You just need to be mindful of these new changes and kind of apply the old way of thinking about general enrollment to your DSNP and LIS eligible consumers. So what's next for you? Again, there are still lots of opportunities out there. I don't want you to be discouraged by this change in the SEPs because it's just an opportunity. One, again, your retention is going to be better. I really firmly believe you will have to spend less time on your retention. Not that you're still not going to be connecting with your beneficiaries and talking to them and making sure they have what they need, but you don't have to worry as much about them wanting to make changes every quarter. That's not going to be on your radar in every state. What you can focus on is all the different ways you can serve, whether it's your current members who may need to find an SEP to make a change, or new prospects to build your book. So, you know, thinking about your book of business, building your referral channels. When we say COI education, that's center of influence. So who do you work with in the community? Are you in housing? Do you work at senior centers? Do you have providers with whom you're connected? Who are you talking to out there? You know, again, those provider relationships, grassroots events. One of the SEPs that's not changing, well, most of them aren't changing, is, you know, if someone comes out of a skilled nursing facility, that's an SEP. And think about it from this perspective. You know, somebody who's been in skilled nursing facility, maybe they are rehabbing from an operation. Maybe they had a stroke or another health incident. They might need to find a different provider. They might need to have a different set of benefits available to them. That's an SEP. If I were an agent selling today, I would have every skilled nursing facility within whatever radius of where I was working on speed dial. I would be doing lunch and learns and talking to them about how I could support people once they came out of skilled nursing. You know, I would really be working that angle. Now, that's not going to get you a huge book of business overnight, but it's going to be a nice steady referral source for you. And it's going to open up different opportunities because you're showing that you're the expert in helping people get what they need when they've had a change, a life event that's changing things for them, and it's changed what they may need from their healthcare plan. And then there's aetnamedicare.com/benefits checkup. Our partnership with the National Council on Aging, we've created this benefits checkup. It's an easy system that you can use, and you can also access it through ThinkAgent, which is our online enrollment portal. But even if you don't enroll people through ThinkAgent, that's where you can check eligibility for Medicaid. You can see what level they are, if they're full, dual, or partial. You can check and see if they're currently enrolled in LIS or not. You can check and see, our providers, our formularies, all of those great things. So whatever, ThinkAgent can be used for so many resources, and it also has a link to you to Benefits Checkup. So with Benefits Checkup, you can see, does somebody maybe qualify for partial or full Medicaid? Maybe they didn't know that before. Guess what? That's an SEP. Do they qualify for LIS? That's an SEP. So there are different ways for you to use that, both as an opportunity to find new consumers, to see if current members may have an SEP that you didn't know about, and also just as a service. It's also a great retention tool, working with consumers to help them get additional resources, because this goes into the community and can find all kinds of ways to support them. This can help you, build that bond with the public, help you get integrated, and maybe you're not going to sell them something during OEP or lock-in, but they're going to call you when October rolls around because you've shown that you're a dependable expert, that they can count on you and you're there to help them. So again, it's just different ways of looking at it. And I wanted to share too, with Benefits Checkup on AMP, the Aetna marketing portal, we do have customizable flyers and mailers that you can use. So if you want to talk to Pinnacle, talk to your Aetna broker manager about setting up some events, that's a way that you can compliantly market and advertise that type of event. So lots of ways for you to still connect. It's just going to be thinking about them a little bit differently. And these are the types of things that will definitely set you apart. So again, continue to educate yourself on how the SEP changes are going to affect markets. Work with Pinnacle, work with your Aetna broker manager to refine your 2025 business strategy. Talk to anyone that you work with in the community. Show them that you're the expert, that you understand these changes, and also make sure they're not giving out incorrect information. And find all these new compliant opportunities, or reframe or re-examine how the opportunities you're currently working, how can you restructure them around these SEP changes so you can maximize them to best support you and your business, as well as your current members and your future members. So I think with that, Serena, I'm done. If there are any questions I can answer.
We do. Not too many. I've got the first one, and I want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly, but the questions surrounding how are we able to change a person's Medicaid to meet this criteria? I would imagine that. Okay, you would know more than me. Okay, and then okay, and then what if they are on county Medicaid when usually after turning 65 they are put on that? Do we have to move them back to an actual carrier's Medicaid?
Yeah, so kind of work together. So the consumer, almost in almost every state, the consumer has to move their own Medicaid. That's not something that the broker can do. You need to you can help them, you can advise them, but you make sure you understand the compliance rules around that, because it's a very fine line. So the consumer can move their Medicaid, but again, every state has different rules about when that can happen. So Pennsylvania, you can move your Medicaid monthly. You can go online, you can go to the office, same thing with Kentucky, but not every state allows that. I used the example of Nebraska earlier. The consumer can only move their Medicaid between October and December. So if they can't move their Medicaid, they can't move it. So Medicaid has to be moved with the state. So it's going to have to be moved through the state Medicaid offices. And again, that's going to be different for every single state. I don't know all of the rules and regs for every state, but it's going to have to happen by the consumer through the state. And again, those timelines are not going to be instantaneous. So if somebody doesn't already have the same Medicaid carrier as the plan you're moving them to, you're probably not going to get the app that day. It's going to take a little bit of time. So again, you're going to want to make sure you understand the rules for these states. And this is again related to HIDEs. With FIDE plans, you don't have to worry about moving their Medicaid. But to the point of the person who asked about if they have county Medicaid, yeah, they have to have a Medicaid carrier, because again, the whole point of this is to align. So the idea is that you're aligning their Medicare and Medicaid. So if they don't have a carrier for their Medicaid, you can't align it with a DSNP plan. So hopefully that answers that question, Serena.
Yeah, and then the next question we had was surrounding LIS. Did we hear correctly that they can change their PDP monthly?
That's correct, they can. So this is something too. You might have customers out there who qualify for Extra Help or LIS, and they don't have a Medicare Advantage plan. That's okay. Yeah, they can change their PDP. And this was a loophole of this SEP, is that we had consumers out there that, you know, have a PDP and they qualify for LIS, and they didn't elect an MAPD plan during AEP. And so in the past, if you had that situation, you're kind of sunk with that consumer during OEP. You didn't have an option for them, but now they can at least change their PDP. Yes, so once per month.
Okay, cool. And then now on the dual LIS, would they still have Medicaid coverage for the 20%?
Their Medicaid coverage is going to be based on, you know, their MSP. So again, that has nothing to do with this SEP. That's going to be based on their level of coverage that they have through their state Medicare savings program. So depending off their full dual, partial dual, whatever that coverage is, that's not related to the SEP at all. That's going to be related to their eligibility level.
Okay, and then just following up on that first question there, she's just following up with after turning 65, we were under the impression they're booted off of a carrier's Medicaid and put on county Medicaid, and that they couldn't go back. Is that true, or?
Well, so I'm not sure what state that is. That's not necessarily the case.
New York,
New York. So if they're full dual, so New York has FIDEs and HIDEs both. So that they're going to have to be full dual though. So again, you know, the income criteria changes after somebody turns 65. So to that point, where what you might be talking about is if somebody is not, maybe they may have a partial level of Medicaid that's not going to qualify them as a full dual. So I don't want to speak too far out of a turn. I'm not an expert on New York Medicaid, but if they're full dual, they will be able to align, because like, for example, the FIDE MAP plans that are in the state of New York for people who have in-home long-term care services and supports, those require that full integration, but it's a more complicated process. So you definitely want to walk through this with your carrier expert for those different types of plans and make sure you understand the ins and outs of them, because it's not as black and white as it is like with the FIDE in New Jersey or the FIDE in Virginia, where they can just simply enroll. Because remember, a FIDE is automatically going to have their Medicaid coverage. There's nothing that you or the consumer is going to need to do. But in New York, the FIDEs are just a little bit more complex. So you want to make sure that you understand the ins and outs of that from the particular carrier. That'd be my best advice.
Okay, makes sense. And then with that, it looks like that's all of our questions at this time. So if you have anything else, feel free to put it in the chat box in the next couple minutes. If not, I will be sending out all the handouts from today, like we mentioned earlier. I will do that when we conclude this webinar so that everybody has those documents. And thank you so much, Nikki. You do such a good job. Very thorough, explain it very well. So I really appreciate your time today, and I appreciate everybody signing on. And if you don't have questions, you're free to go. But if not, I'll just give it a couple more minutes, see if anybody types anything in. And thank you again.
Yeah, thanks everyone. We really appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to continued success with you all this year.
Yeah, we got one great presentation. Good job, Nikki. You did all the work.
Thank you.